The deepest feelings often go the quietest, but silence doesn't mean absence. It means everything's getting real. You felt the shift, didn't you? One moment, they're warm, present, lighting up when your name appears on their phone. The next, distant, dry replies, long silences, and your heart. It's in limbo, waiting for a signal that may never come. You're left wondering, did I mess up? Or worse, was it even real? You're standing in a room full of mirrors. Every mirror reflects you. Until one doesn't. You step in front of it, expecting to see your reflection, your effort, your love, your consistency, but it's blank. Cold glass, no reflection. And in that moment, something breaks inside you. That's what it feels like when someone you know felt something, suddenly acts like nothing happened. But here's the truth, my friends. Most people aren't ignoring you because they feel nothing. They're ignoring you because they're feeling too much, and they don't know how to handle it. See, we've been sold this fairy tale that when someone loves you, they'll always show up, always speak up, always stay close. But life and real love aren't that simple. Real love doesn't always shout. Sometimes it whispers, and sometimes it runs and hides. Let me break a lie real quick. If they cared, they'd never go quiet. Wrong. Sometimes they care so deeply they can't breathe around you. Sometimes they love you so much they don't feel safe showing it. And instead of saying, "I'm scared," they ghost you. Not to punish you, but to protect themselves. I've seen it time and time again. That person who used to light up your phone, they vanish. But they're still watching your stories, still checking your status, still haunted by the version of you they didn't expect to fall for. Because, let's be real, you woke something up in them, but they didn't expect to feel that much, that fast. And when people haven't dealt with their wounds, their emotions turn into alarms, not invitations. It's like this. Imagine giving someone a beautifully wrapped gift, and they drop it. Not because they hate it, but because they don't think they deserve it. That's what your presence felt like. A gift, a threat, a reflection of everything they're not ready to face. And when that happens, folks, they run, they hide behind silence. But here's where you rise. You don't chase ghosts. You don't beg mirrors to reflect you. You don't crack open your soul to prove something you already know is real. You stay grounded. You sharpen your edge. You move with peace. That's stoic power. That's emotional strength. Marcus Aurelius once said, "The best revenge is to be unlike the one who caused the pain." So when they go silent, don't collapse. Don't spiral. Stand taller, quieter, sharper. Because here's the secret. Your stillness is louder than their silence. Your presence. It lingers longer than any "I miss you" text they're too scared to send. You're not being ignored because you're forgettable. You're being ignored because you're unforgettable, and that scares the hell out of them. So to everyone listening, if you're stuck in that space where love feels like a riddle and silence feels like rejection, breathe. You're not losing them. You're just finding yourself. Drop this in the comments. I stay grounded. Press that like button. Subscribe if you're ready to master the quiet. And stay with me, because what's coming next, it'll make sense of everything they never said. Number 1, love doesn't always come closer. Sometimes it retreats. When a flame burns too bright, even the strongest will look away, not because they hate the fire, but because they're afraid to be consumed by it. This part is going to sting a little, but you need to hear it. Love doesn't always show up the way you want. It doesn't always come closer when it's real. Sometimes it steps back, sometimes it disappears, and sometimes it hides behind silence so thick you start to question your own worth. But here's what most people won't tell you. Love doesn't always move forward. Sometimes it retreats. And that retreat is not rejection. It's a reaction. Think of it like this, my friends. You're standing on the edge of a cliff, looking out at a beautiful storm rolling in. The sky is electric. The wind is rushing toward you. And there's this mix of fear and awe inside you. That's what love feels like to someone who's never been safe in it. They see it coming. They feel its power. But instead of standing there to embrace it, they run. Not because the storm isn't beautiful, but because storms, even the beautiful ones, carry destruction too. And now you're stuck wondering, if they loved me, why didn't they lean in? Why did they pull back just when things started feeling real? It's confusing, right? Because you weren't imagining it. The way they looked at you, the vulnerability in their eyes, the moments that felt almost sacred. You know what you saw. You know what you felt. But let me tell you the lie that's been fed to you since the beginning. If they love you, they'll come closer. If they love you, they'll never leave. That sounds nice, but it's not always true. Not when you're dealing with people who have been hurt. Not when you're dealing with someone whose heart has been broken in silence before. Sometimes people don't know how to hold something pure. They see your calm, your consistency, your emotional honesty, and instead of being drawn in, they panic because you're not chaos, you're peace. And for someone used to storms, peace doesn't feel safe. It feels unfamiliar. Unfamiliar feels dangerous. So they retreat. It's not about you. It's about how deeply you made them feel something they didn't expect. And that right there, that's what sets this whole chain reaction in motion. Their silence isn't emptiness, it's overflow. Their retreat isn't rejection, it's defense. It's like trying to hold a cup that's already full. You pour a little love in, and it spills over. Not because the cup is broken, but because it was never emptied from the last heartbreak. And now you're here, giving them something real, something present, and they don't know what to do with it. Marcus Aurelius said, "You always own the option of having no opinion. There is never a need to get worked up or to trouble your soul." That's the Stoic way. When someone pulls back, you don't chase, you don't shrink, you don't let your emotions take you hostage. You observe, you breathe, you remain grounded. Because real power isn't loud, it's unshakable. Here's where most people get it wrong. They think love should look like constant attention. That if someone loves you, they'll always be near. But some people love in silence. Some people love by stepping back so they can breathe through the fear. And some people, they love so deeply that they don't even trust themselves with it. And it's going to hurt. Because you'll want to reach out, you'll want to break the silence, fix the distance, explain away the confusion. But that's the test, my friend. Can you stand still in the emotional fog? Can you let love retreat without letting your identity chase it? Let me ask you this. If someone's love disappears the moment things get serious, do you fall apart? Or do you hold the line? Because that's where your growth lives. Not in clinging, in choosing not to, in reminding yourself that your peace is not up for negotiation, your emotional balance is not for sale. You don't need to prove your worth to someone who already felt it. You don't need to scream into the void to remind them of what they once knew. The silence they're giving you, it's not yours to fill, it's theirs to sit with. And yes, it will feel unfair, it will feel one-sided, but growth often does. This is where you go inward, where you rise without rescue, where you sharpen your discipline. You become the man who doesn't break under emotional withdrawal. Because one day, they're going to remember your stillness, not your anger, not your begging, your stillness, your restraint, your unshakable presence. And that's going to hit deeper than any text message ever could. So I want you to say this, write this, type this into the comments right now. I remain steady when love retreats. Not just for me, for you. Show them. Show yourself. Show the world around you that when things get quiet, you don't fall. You rise, quietly, powerfully. because what's coming next, it's going to explain the truth behind that silence even deeper. And once you see it, you won't just understand them, you'll understand your strength like never before. So stay with me, let's keep going. Number 2, their silence is a mirror of their inner conflict, not your worth. Don't mistake someone's storm for your failure. Sometimes their silence has nothing to do with you, and everything to do with what's collapsing inside them. It's one of the hardest things to accept. When someone you deeply care about suddenly goes silent, your mind turns on you. You start wondering, was it me? Did I say something wrong? Did I come on too strong? You replay every conversation, every message, every moment, hoping to spot the moment you messed it all up. But what if I told you it wasn't you at all? What if the silence you're experiencing is not a reflection of your failure, but a reflection of their inner chaos? Listen to me, my friends. People don't always go quiet because of something you did. They go quiet because of something they're trying to survive internally. Their silence? That's not rejection. That's a signal that there's a war happening behind their eyes, a war between what they feel and what they've never learned to handle. Imagine someone trying to carry a heavy box full of glass. They've been holding it for years, memories, heartbreak, abandonment, shame. And then, here you come, offering connection, offering peace, offering something real. But now, their hands are shaking. That box feels heavier, not because of you, but because they never expected someone to look them in the eye and mean it. So what do? They pull away, not to hurt you, but to protect themselves. From what? From being seen, from being exposed, from letting someone in far enough to witness the parts they've kept hidden behind performance and polite smiles. That silence is not a punishment, it's a panic, and this is where you've got to catch yourself, because the lie will sneak in quick. They're ignoring me because I wasn't enough. No. They're ignoring you because they were never taught how to be emotionally present with someone who doesn't play games. You weren't too much, you were too real, and real exposes fake. Real demands vulnerability. Real doesn't allow them to hide in the shadows they're used to. Folks, here's where Stoicism becomes more than a quote. It becomes your foundation. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." Their silence, that's the obstacle, but also the invitation, the test, the portal to a stronger version of you, a version that doesn't collapse when someone else disconnects, a version that doesn't need immediate closure to find inner peace. Because here's the secret. When someone's emotions get too big, when they feel seen too deeply, when they're reminded of everything they haven't dealt with, they don't always lean in. Sometimes they vanish, not because they don't feel it, but because they do. I know it's frustrating, I know it feels unfair, but your job is not to take on someone else's confusion as your personal failure. Your job is to remain centered in the eye of the emotional storm. Let me ask you, can you still stand tall when someone else starts shrinking? Can you still honor your value when someone forgets how to recognize it? Because that's real power, my friend. Not the power to control someone else's behavior, but the power to control your own response. Let's be honest. Most people aren't taught how to handle real love. They're taught how to flirt, how to impress, how to avoid. But when something stable and grounded shows up, they panic. They think, this is too good. What if I ruin it? What if they leave? What if they see who I really am? And so, they ghost, they distance, they disappear. But remember, you are not responsible for the stories they're telling themselves in the dark. You are not the villain in their emotional movie. You're the mirror, and sometimes people can't handle what they see when they look into it. So don't internalize what doesn't belong to you. Don't twist yourself into knots trying to decode their silence. Instead, return to your center. Return to your breath. Return to your truth. You don't chase. You don't beg. You don't explain your worth to someone who's too lost in their own mind to see it clearly. You walk in truth. You sit in peace. You remain in alignment. That's what Stoicism teaches you. Not to be cold, but to be clear. Because their silence might be loud right now, but your calm presence, that echoes. And one day, when the noise inside them quiets down, they'll remember the one person who didn't try to fix them, pressure them, or collapse with them. They'll remember the one who stood tall in the silence and chose not to make it personal. So drop this in the comments if you feel it. I don't shrink in silence. Say it, show it, claim it, not just for them, but for the man you're becoming. And stay with me, because the next truth might just unlock the reason why this silence doesn't mean it's over. It means they're watching something even deeper. Number 3, they're testing safety, not playing games. Sometimes they don't ask, "Can I trust you?" They ask, with silence, with distance, with disappearance, and how you respond answers everything. Let's clear something up real quick, because I know what your mind's been whispering. They're playing games, they're messing with me, they're just trying to get a reaction. But what if I told you, it's not a game? Not in the way you think. What you're feeling might not be manipulation, it might be fear disguised as distance. And what looks like a test of power might actually be a test of safety. Here's the truth, my friends. When someone starts catching real feelings, like soul-shaking, heart-softening, future vision kind of feelings, they panic. Not because it's wrong, but because it's too right. And when love hits that deep, they don't always move toward you with open arms. Sometimes they take a step back, quietly, emotionally, subconsciously. And they start watching, not your words, not your promises. They start watching your energy, how you hold yourself when the warmth disappears, how you act when the compliments stop, how you respond when nothing makes sense. This isn't about games. It's about survival. Because if they've been hurt before, betrayed before, left before, then love doesn't feel like comfort. It feels like a setup. And now they're waiting. Waiting to see if you're real or if you'll crumble the moment they stop feeding your ego with constant affection. Let me paint it for you. They used to send those sweet messages every morning. They used to reply fast. Ask how you're doing, make little jokes. Then, out of nowhere, cold, dry, delayed, distant. Now here's what most men do in that moment. They panic. They text more. Over-explain, start asking, "What's wrong?" They lean in harder, beg for clarity, and the more they do that, the more they pulls away. Because they are not testing your ability to chase. They are testing your ability to stand still. They are watching if you'll stay composed, if you'll trust her silence, if you'll trust yourself enough to not need validation every second to feel secure. This is where a Stoic man rises. Because a Stoic man, he doesn't collapse under emotional silence. He doesn't jump into fixer mode. He doesn't make her distance about his worth. He observes, he breathes, he lets the storm pass without trying to interrupt it. Epictetus said, "We cannot choose our external circumstances, but we can always choose how we respond to them." That's your power. Not in controlling her behavior, but in controlling your reaction. In showing her that you don't flinch when love goes quiet. That you're not like the others. Ones who needed constant reassurance, instant access, non-stop validation just to feel worthy. Nah, not you. You're the man who doesn't need to be fed attention to know he's valuable. You're the one who stays rooted when emotions get muddy. You're the one who remains not to impress, but to embody peace. See, most women aren't even aware they're doing this test. It's not calculated. It's emotional instinct. They feel overwhelmed. So they step back. And part of them wonders, will he still be there if I'm not perfect? If I don't show up how I used to? And your response. That's where everything shifts. If you react with neediness, with desperation, with panic, that told them was right to be afraid. But if you stay calm, focused on your path, respectful of her space without turning cold or distant yourself, that tells her something far more powerful. You're not here to cling, you're here to connect. But only when it's real, only when it's mutual, only when it's grounded. Let me ask you, can you be the calm in someone else's chaos? Can you be the stillness when their fears flare up? Because if you can, that's when they'll feel safe. Not impressed. Not manipulated. Safe. It's not about being the loudest. It's about being the one who doesn't flinch. Let me give you a quick metaphor. Imagine they are a bird that just got out of a cage. They're finally free, but everything outside that cage still feels dangerous. And you're the hand held out gently, not grabbing, not forcing, just still, just present, just offering peace. And when that bird's ready, they lands, not because you caught her, but because you didn't chase, because you let her choose. And that, my friend, builds trust in a way words never could. So right now, if someone's pulling back from you, ask yourself, am I reacting to their silence, or am I responding from my center? Because if you can pass this unspoken test, you don't just become someone they love, you become someone they respect, someone they trust, someone who doesn't collapse when connection gets complicated. Drop this in the comments if you feel this truth in your bones. I respond with calm. Say it out loud. Show them. Show yourself. Show the world that you're not just another guy who falls apart when someone takes space. You're the one who holds it with grace. And stay with me, because what we're about to explore next might just flip the entire script and reveal the real reason they're afraid of being fully seen. Number 4, they fear being seen. Because being seen means being vulnerable. To be seen is to be known. And to be known is terrifying when your past has taught you that love always comes with pain. Let's be real, my friends. Most people don't actually fear being loved. They fear being seen. And there's a big difference. Love can be flattering. It can feel light, safe, exciting when it's shallow. But when love gets real, when it starts peeling back their layers, opening up the doors they kept locked for years, that's when people panic. Not because you're doing anything wrong, but because suddenly they feel exposed. And when someone has lived most of their life behind emotional armor, exposure feels like danger, not connection. Imagine a person walking through life wearing sunglasses, headphones, a thick winter coat. The world can barely touch them. They've survived like this. They're used to deflecting, smiling on command, giving just enough to keep people curious, but never enough to be truly understood. Then you show up, and you don't just want the surface, you want their truth. You listen without interrupting. You don't fall for the mask. You see past it. You start reaching into spaces they never invited anyone into. And that, folks, is where the fear sets in. Because now it's not just attraction, it's intimacy. And intimacy requires vulnerability, the raw kind, the scary kind, the kind that says, if I let you see the real me, will you still stay? That question doesn't get asked out loud. It shows up in withdrawal, in silence, in the sudden shift from warm and open to cold and confusing. One day they're joking with you, texting like their heart is on fire. The next, you're met with walls you didn't build and silence you didn't deserve. But here's what you need to understand. This isn't about you being too much. It's about them not being ready to be seen. And the deeper the connection feels, the louder that inner alarm gets. They start asking themselves, what if he sees my broken parts? What if he finds out I'm not as confident as I pretend to be? What if he sees the fear behind my flirting? and doesn't want me anymore. So instead of getting closer, they disappear, not because they don't care, but because they care too much, and now they're scared they'll be found out. That the real them won't measure up to the version of themselves they tried to present. It's tragic, really. You're there, offering something real, something honest. And they're running, not from you, but from their own reflection in your presence. Marcus Aurelius once said, "If someone can prove me wrong and show me my mistake in any thought or action, I shall gladly change, for I seek the truth." But most people aren't like that. They don't seek truth, they hide from it, especially when it's their own. Because truth means vulnerability, and vulnerability is where people get hurt. Some of you listening right now, you've been on the receiving end of this. You didn't just feel ignored, you felt erased, ghosted, like everything was real one day and then gone the next. And it shattered you because you knew it wasn't fake. You felt that connection, but you blamed yourself when it disappeared. Here's what I need you to stop doing. Stop blaming yourself for someone else's inability to be emotionally naked. You are not responsible for someone else's fear of being seen. What you're offering is clarity. What you're radiating is presence. What you're giving is safety. And for someone who has never felt safe in love, that's terrifying. So what do? You don't chase. You don't beg them to open up. You don't start explaining yourself or asking what you did wrong. You remain still. You become the lighthouse, not the wave. You stay lit. You stay grounded. And you let their emotional tides do what they need to do without letting them flood you. Because here's the paradox. The more someone fears being seen, the more they need someone who won't run when they reveal themselves. And ironically, it's your ability to not react when they withdraw that proves you're safe. So when they test you with silence, you don't flinch. When they stop sending the good morning messages, you don't panic. When the energy changes, you don't start thinking you changed. You remember, this isn't about your worth, it's about their readiness. It's not that you were too much, it's that your clarity made their chaos impossible to ignore. And some people would rather retreat back into confusion than sit in front of someone who sees everything. You're not there to convince anyone to be ready for love. You're there to stay aligned with the kind of love you're ready to give. And that love starts with you. Drop this in the comments if you're done making their silence about your value. I am not the problem. Write it, speak it, show it. Because your power lies in refusing to shrink just because someone else isn't ready to rise. And what we're about to reveal next is going to expose the deep-rooted past pain they've been carrying and why you triggered it without even knowing. Stay with me. We're not done yet. Number 5. They've been hurt before, and love feels like risk, not reward. When someone's been burned by love, even kindness feels like fire. Let's get real about something most people don't talk about. Past pain doesn't just vanish because a good person shows up. You could be the calmest, kindest, most emotionally available soul they've ever met, and they still might pull away from you. Not because they don't appreciate you, but because you remind them of what hurt them. Yes, you become the trigger. Not because you're toxic, but because you're real. Because the love you bring is the kind they once dreamed of, the kind they almost had, and the kind they lost. And now, that same love feels like a risk, not a reward. Imagine a person who once reached out to touch a beautiful flame. It warmed them at first. It felt like home. But then, out of nowhere, it burned badly. They were left alone, confused, shattered. And ever since, they've trained themselves to flinch at anything that feels too good, too deep, too warm. That's what happens when they meet you. That warmth, that presence, that honesty. It's familiar, but scary. Because the last time they trusted something that felt that safe, they ended up wounded. And now, even safety feels suspicious. It's why their behavior makes no sense. Why one day they're all in and the next they're distant. Why their eyes say yes, but their energy screams not again. And it's not because you failed. It's because love now reminds them of loss. You say, "But I'm not like the one who hurt you." And you mean it. But their nervous system doesn't know the difference. Their heart still has scar tissue, and no matter how gently you hold them, that scar might ache. And aching hearts don't always lean in. Sometimes they back off. And here's the lie that starts creeping in for you. If I were enough, they'd stop running. No, my friend. Their reaction is not a measurement of your worth. It's a reflection of their wounds. You didn't cause the pain, you just walked close enough to awaken it. That's why it's so confusing. That's why it feels unfair. Because you're showing up fully, you're not playing games, you're not being inconsistent, but you're still met with silence, distance, pullback, and you start to wonder, what more can I do? Here's the Stoic truth. You don't do more, you do less. You become still, you become solid. You stop trying to rescue someone from a war you didn't start. Marcus Aurelius said, "The best revenge is not to be like your enemy." And I'll add to that, the best response to fear isn't to fix it, it's to hold your form. Be the calm that fear never knew. Because when someone is in survival mode, any attempt to save them can feel like control. Even your love can feel like pressure. Even your consistency can feel like a demand. So instead of trying to chase their clarity, you protect yours. You step back, not out of anger, but out of honor. You give space, not to punish, but to respect their process. You let go, not to move on, but to stop gripping someone who hasn't learned how to receive what you give. And yes, it hurts, because you care, you want to help, you want to reassure, but you can't love someone into healing if they're still fighting battles they haven't named. And if you try to force closeness while they're still flinching from ghosts, all you'll get is resistance. So what's your move? You become the anchor, the rock, the man who doesn't fall apart when someone else falls silent. You remind yourself daily, their past is not my responsibility, their reaction is not my reflection, my peace is not their problem to solve. And when you operate from that place, something shifts. You stop seeking closure through their words and start finding clarity in your own behavior. You stop asking, why did they pull back? And start affirming, I showed up clean, calm, and real. The rest is not mine to carry. Let me tell you this. When someone finally heals, they remember the ones who didn't pressure them. They remember the ones who didn't take their silence personally. They remember the ones who stood tall, even when everything around them screamed uncertainty. So drop this in the comments if you feel this truth deep in your bones. I don't carry what's not mine. Type it, declare it. Not for them, for you. Because that's how you reclaim your energy. That's how you stop bleeding for people who haven't figured out how to stop wounding themselves. You're not here to break down their walls. You're here to make sure you don't build your life around people still living in the ruins of someone else's mistakes. And up next, we're going deeper, because the real shock, you didn't break them. But your presence may have triggered a storm they didn't even know was still alive. Stay close. It's about to get even clearer. Number 6. You're the trigger, but not the cause. You didn't create their wounds. You just walked close enough to make them feel it again. Let that one sink in. Because if you're like most people with a heart that loves deeply and honestly, you've blamed yourself far too often for someone else's emotional retreat. You've sat there staring at your phone, rereading conversations, wondering where it all went wrong, what you said, what you missed, what you could have done differently. But what if I told you you didn't do anything wrong? What if I told you that the love you brought into their life didn't break them, it revealed them? Here's the hard truth, my friends. Sometimes your presence triggers something that's been sleeping inside them for years. You didn't hurt them, but the way you showed up, the honesty, the consistency, the peace, You unintentionally became the mirror they weren't ready to look into. And what happens when a mirror is too clear? People flinch. They turn away. They run, not from you, but from what they suddenly see in themselves. Imagine this. Someone's been living in a dimly lit room for most of their life. They've adapted to it, learned how to move around without bumping into furniture. That dimness has become comfort, familiar. Then you walk in, bright, intentional, emotionally clean. You open the blinds, you let the sun in, and now everything is visible. Every corner, every crack, every cobweb they never had to look at before. It's blinding and painful, not because the light is cruel, but because the truth exposes. That's what your love did. It didn't control, it didn't demand. It simply existed, authentic and powerful. But to someone who's still carrying unhealed pain, that kind of presence doesn't feel safe. It feels dangerous. Because if they lean into you, they'll have to drop the shield. And if they drop the shield, they'll have to feel again. And if they feel again, they risk breaking all over again. So they do the only thing their survival brain knows how to do. They create distance, they go quiet, they pull away, not because you were toxic, but because they still haven't learned how to love without expecting pain. That's why it hurts so much for you, because you felt how real it was. You know you didn't bring chaos, you brought calm. But that calm clashed with the chaos they've lived in, and sometimes peace feels more threatening than pain. It's twisted, I know, but it's real. And here's where most men lose themselves. They personalize the retreat. They think, if I hadn't texted that, if I had just pulled back first, maybe they wouldn't have gone cold. But that's a trap. Don't twist your soul trying to prevent someone else's emotional unraveling. Their reaction is not your responsibility. It's not your job to prove you're different. It's not your duty to make them feel safe. It's not your burden to carry their unfinished healing. Your only job? Stay grounded, stay still, stay clear on what you brought. Epictetus said it best. We are disturbed not by what happens, but by our thoughts about what happens. That's the line you need to walk. Stop turning their pullback into a story about your worth. Start recognizing it for what it really is, a person being emotionally confronted by your presence. You didn't cause the storm, but your presence may have made the thunder louder. And for someone who's been pretending the sky was clear, that thunder is terrifying. So now what? Do you chase? Do you double text? Do you send long, thoughtful messages, hoping they'll snap out of it and return to the way things were? No. You return to you. You return to your routine. You return to your stillness. You return to your path. Because what triggered them might one day heal them, but it won't be because you dragged them to the finish line. It'll be because you stepped back and let them face themselves in the silence. That's what Stoicism looks like in love. Not detachment, discipline, not emotional coldness, emotional command. So if you're in that place right now where everything felt aligned until it didn't, where you were rising with someone and suddenly they vanished into their own shadows, breathe. You were the trigger, but you were never the wound. And there's a huge difference. Say it with me right now. Type it in the comments below if you feel this truth cutting through the noise. I am not the cause. Say it for the times you blamed yourself for someone else's unhealed past. Say it for the younger version of you who used to over-explain just to keep someone emotionally afloat. Say it for the version of you that's finally stepping into peace without needing permission to be at peace. And stay with me. Because what's coming next, it'll show you how even in silence you're being watched, not with judgment, but with hope. Hope that you won't fall like the rest. And that, my friends, is when the story really starts to change. Number 7. They're waiting to see if you collapse without their attention. Anyone can be calm when they're loved. The real test is who you are when the love goes quiet. Let's stop pretending this isn't a test, because whether they know it or not, whether you know it or not, this moment of distance, this silence, it's a test of your foundation, not a loud one, not a cruel one, but a quiet psychological test wrapped in unanswered messages and broken patterns. It's the test that reveals whether your strength is real or reactive. See, when someone starts falling for you, really falling, they begin to wonder, is this too good to be true? They've seen people perform affection before. They've met lovers who showed up as perfect until reality hit. They've opened their hearts just to watch someone fall apart the second things didn't go smoothly. So they test, sometimes consciously, sometimes instinctively. They pull back, they go silent. They stop giving you the attention that once lit your phone up and made you feel wanted. But they're not doing it to punish you. They're doing it to see you. Because anybody can look composed when love is flowing in. But who are you when it's not? Do you unravel? Do you chase? Do you beg for clarity that was never promised? Or do you stay grounded? Do you continue walking with purpose? Do you remain unshaken? Not because you don't care, but because you don't need their constant affection to feel worthy. That's what they're watching for. Not your reaction, but your center. Because when someone deeply in love starts creating space, what they're often craving isn't attention, it's evidence. Evidence that this time it's different, that you're not going to break like the others, that your energy isn't conditional, that you don't need to be held up constantly just to stay standing. It's the emotional equivalent of them looking over their shoulder mid-run and thinking, will they still be there if I stop running? Let's be honest. Most people haven't met a love that's steady. They've met passion that burned too fast. They've met men who flattered them to get close and then collapsed when the intimacy got real. So now, they retreat to see if you'll disappear with the distance. And if you do, that confirms their fear. But if you don't, that changes everything. Imagine this. You're standing in a forest. They've gone quiet. No more footsteps, no more signals. You could scream, you could chase, you could panic, or you could plant your feet, build a fire. Let the light of your stability guide them back, not with force, but with consistency. And when they look back, you're still there, calm, focused, alive. Not because you need them, but because you're whole, with or without their approval. That's unforgettable. That's stoic. And that's what changes the game, not clever words or dramatic exits, but your refusal to abandon yourself just because someone else needed space. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "Be tolerant with others and strict with yourself." That means you give them the grace to figure out their feelings while you maintain your own emotional discipline. You don't spiral. You don't take the bait. You don't become a puppet pulled by attention or withdrawal. You remain. This is where most men fail the test. Not because they're bad people, but because they're addicted to reassurance. They need that good morning text, that emoji, that flirtation, and when it disappears, they crumble. Their peace was never real. It was borrowed from someone else's presence. But you're here to lead differently. You're here to show that love doesn't rattle you, that absence doesn't define you, that silence doesn't unbuild the empire you've been constructing within yourself. Let me say this as clearly as I can. Their retreat isn't rejection. Their distance isn't disrespect. Their silence isn't proof that you failed. It's a mirror. And what you do with that mirror determines everything. So if you're feeling that void, if the attention that once flowed like a river has dried up, breathe. This is not the time to react. This is the time to reveal. Reveal your inner strength. Reveal your emotional independence. Reveal the version of you who doesn't flinch when the affection fades. Because the truth is, they're watching. Whether they admit it or not, they're watching to see if your calm was real or just convenience. They're watching to see if your presence disappears when their praise does. And when you show them that your peace is not dependent on them, you become unforgettable, not because you forced them to stay, but because you didn't fall apart when they left. So if you're walking through this right now, I want you to type this in the comments and show it to yourself and the world. My calm is unshakable. Say it. Mean it. Live it. Let it echo through your silence. And if this message reminded you of your power, your worth, your center, hit the like button. Subscribe if you're ready to lead with presence instead of panic. And share this with someone who needs to remember that silence isn't the end of the story. It's where your power begins. Stay grounded, stay sharp, stay you, because if they're meant to return, they'll only recognize you by the fire you refuse to put out.